Stop waiting for a free weekend to draw. Today I'm showing you exactly how I create a finished piece in just 40 minutes after a long work day. I'm breaking down my process in real time so you can see how to stop overthinking and start finishing. So let's go! So for the initial sketch, I'm using only simple shapes in order to create the overall figure, and of course I'm fixing here and there if I see that the proportions are off. I found a method with replacing body parts of the human body with simple boxes as the first stage of my sketching, very rewarding, just because I can get the idea of the overall pose and I can find mistakes in the proportions early on. Overall, that's a really nice exercise. Whenever you find interesting pose on Pinterest, you can try and redraw it. Usually it takes time to get used to the idea of how to create human proportions right, but once you do it, it's gonna get better and easier in the future. Once I'm done with the initial sketch, I'm changing the opacity of the first layer and I'm going to create another sketch layer where I'm going to refine things and I'm going to create the woman's figure out of those simple shapes. Still, I'm not creating many details, and for the sake of the drawing, since it's gonna be a quick one, I'm not gonna go very much into details here. And once I'm done with the second sketch, I'm going to turn off the first sketch. Of course, wherever I feel that the proportion is not okay, I can use the liquify tool, which is a very powerful tool for modifying the shapes. Once I'm done with the second sketch, I'm going to think about the colors, and I'm going to start with the background. But since the background in that sketch is going to be white, I'm going to leave it as it is. First of all, I'm going to think about how my drawing overall is going to look like. For example, here I prefer not to use the outlines everywhere, just as I initially created them. So I'm going to use them just as a reference for adding my colors, and then I'm going to create another layer on top of the colors, which is gonna work as an outline, where I'm going to add some lines, but not everywhere, just here and there. And because of that, I'm going to use those just as a reference for now. And of course I'm going to start with the color of the skin, and I'm going to also add that for the color of the hair, just because I need some kind of a reference for later when I start working on the hair. I'm using a color palette that I initially decided upon, so whatever you feel like you may use for that illustration. I'm trying to stick to a specific set of colors, so I won't waste time on thinking about the colors for my drawing, and I'm going to stick to a very limited color palette for that one. The brush that I'm using for the coloring part is the sticks brush, and it can be found in the drawing category. I like to use that brush because it's a very texture-like and it has a really nice finish when it's used in the drawing. Once I'm done with the coloring, I'll hide the outline layer, and I'm going to start with creating the outline of the face and the initial parts of the body where I want to use outlines. And I'm going to stick to my sticks brush, although I'm not sure if that's the right brush because it's quite big even on small percentages, but maybe I'll stick to that one just because I want to keep that texture-like feeling all across the drawing, so maybe I'll stick to that one. For example, for the hands, I'm going to just indicate where the fingers are and I won't add any details. Once I'm done with the part, I'm going to go to the face and I'm going to start creating the outlines of the face. Of course, here I'm having some kind of a tough time modifying the placement of the eyes and the nose. Somehow it seems like the proportions are off, so I'm fixing them by using the liquify tool and a bit of a transform and moving the elements here and there, and of course fixing the overall shape of the head. So yeah, here, because I'm not so good at drawing people, as you can tell, I spent a bit more time on fixing the overall elements of the face. And of course, I'm just defining the elements of the face. I'm not adding the details here. That's not the point. I really want to make it very, very simple and just to get the idea of the overall drawing. And of course there is some cleaning that needs to be done once the outline is created. There are some colors which are coming outside of the outline, and I need to fix that, as well as I have to remove the color, the base color of the hair, which was the color of the skin. And my Apple Pencil just stopped working, so yeah, I need to fix that. And now, since the proportions of the face were fixed, I have to fix the hair too, because it seems a bit off on the head. And now I'm going to add the shadows and highlights for the drawing so we can create more depth. And for the shadow and highlights part, I'm going to use a gray color, and I'm just going to change the blend mode of each of the layers, because that way I believe is working better for me than just choosing different colors depending on the background. For both the highlights and the shadows, I'm using 6B pencil. And if the shadows is too strong, I can lower the opacity of the layer so it's way subtle. Of course, here I'm not trying to be perfect and I'm trying to consider where the light is coming from. For example, in this case, it's coming from the top right corner. And if I imagine that, then I can put my shadows on the left side, more or less. Of course, as I said, I'm not trying to be perfect here. I'm just trying to create some sort of a depth in the drawing. The same happens with the highlights. Of course, here I'm just creating a new layer and I'm changing the blend mode to screen, which again with the gray color creates that nice highlight shade. It's like a white sort of a color. And again, if the highlight is too strong, we can lower the opacity of the layer and it's gonna work. And one last thing, I can add just a slight red color on the cheeks of the girl, but it's just an optional thing. just slight touch that I'm adding. And just the slight fixes on the eyes. And here again, with the different blend modes and by using just the main pink color, I'm trying to add additional colors to the hair just to create that variety. And I think it works quite good. And here it is, 40 minutes or so, and this is what we have. If you find this video useful, subscribe for my channel for more art related videos in the future. And if you want to check some other Draw With Me videos, you can click the link on the top right corner. Let me know in the comments if that was useful for you and what did you end up with. I'm always curious to know. Thank you very much for spending the time with me, and I'm going to see you in the next video. Bye!